to know that I have a high group, a middle group, and a low group. I knew that before the assessment. And they were right, they did know that. You go into any classroom, spend a little time there, and you can get that. You have high achievers, you have kids that struggle. But what the assessments did for us, and what the assessments continue to do for us, is they let us analyze what the needs are of the kids. I understand that kids are struggling, but why are they struggling? What is it about the kids that are struggling, and what information do they need to get better at in order to be proficient at this task? And the kids in the middle, the kids that kind of get it but kind of don't get it, what's their need? What can we do to plan instruction to be effective? So I'm going to call you back up. I probably should have just left you up, but I didn't go that quick. So we get our results back, and you've gotten the right order. That's perfect. So we get our results back, and we think of that low achieving group. We think of that group that did not do well on the assessment. And teachers get together at their data teams, and they find these 4 or 5 kids, and they look, what do they have in common? What was it that they couldn't be successful at? And they boil it down to, this low group of kids, they don't know how to tell time. So doing a lapse time is not going to work. If you don't know what quarter after 10 is, if you don't know what half past is, if you don't know 10:19 from 10:15, if you don't have that skill, you're not going to be successful here. So they look at those kids and they say they don't have that skill. What is a teaching strategy that we can use to help them get that skill? And one of the things that we have is called a Judy clock. And a Judy clock, they come in big sizes and little sizes. I borrowed a little one for here. This spinner goes around, the big hand goes around, and the little hand moves. And if you can think back to when you were learning how to tell time, I know for me, if I had something that said 11:30, or we could even look at our clock, if it was 9:20, and the small hand is between the 9 and the 10, do you remember kind of how that was confusing? Like you weren't sure, is it 9:20 or 10:20 because it's a little after the 9? But we have kids in 3rd grade that they're not there. The Judy clock is perfect because you can start it at 11 o'clock and you can move it down to 11:30, and you can see that hand goes between the 11 and the 12. So we take the low achieving kids, we take the kids that are not so sure about telling time, and there might be 4 of them or 5 of them, and we tell them today, what you're going to do in class, you're going to take the Judy clock and you're going to work on learning to match the time on a clock with the digital time. So if we give you 11:30, you're going to make the 11:30, and if we give you something like 12:10, you're going to write 12:10, and that's what you're going to work on today. So your goal at the end of this lesson is I'm going to be able to tell time using a Judy clock, and that's what you're going to work on. So that will be you. So you're working on the Judy clock, and you're kind of doing your thing. Now I have these high achieving kids. I have these kids, they ace the pre-assessment. They know elapsed time backwards and forwards. So what will we do with them? We take those high achieving kids, and we know that there's different ways to do elapsed time. So I'm going to mix you guys up a little bit. If you can kind of go to the end, you can kind of come to the middle. You can go in the middle. You can come this way. So I'm mixing elapsed time up, and let me just make sure I get this right. All right. So there could be a question that says, I got to work at 8:30. I got to work at 8:30, and I left at 7:45. How long did it take me to get to work? And I hope you can see that's a much different question than given the start time, the activity time. And then there's another way to do it. You can kind of switch again, see if I can do this right. So I think I did that wrong maybe last time. But anyway, so I start at 7:30, I finish at 7:45. How long did it take me to get there? So there are different things that could be missing. The start time could be missing, the finish time could be missing, the length of the activity could be missing, they could be in different orders. And so I take all those variables with my top group, and I do a mini lesson on those variables. And I talk about, we can start with the start time, we can start with the finish time, we can start with the length of activity. And what I want you folks to do, this advanced group, what I want you to do is I want you to sit and I want you to write word problems and write different kinds of word problems that either start with the start time, start with the finish time, go to the length of activity. I want you to cross the AM and the PM line. I want you to start at 11:30 AM and finish at 12:30 PM. And so you get with those high achievers, and they are motivated. When you think about this high achieving group, rather than do the odd numbers on page 36, they're creating, they're synthesizing information. And if they get done a little early, they can give their quizzes to each other. So that group has gone from being slightly not so challenged to very challenged and very excited and really understanding elapsed time at a level that's deeper and more meaningful than they initially would if we were all doing the same thing. So I'll have my gifted group, you can be part of my gifted group, working on that. So my gifted group goes away and works on that. Now I have the middle group. the teachers look at student work. Part of the data team process is we actually look at student work. So we see that middle group, and we understand that the middle group is divided into two sections. One of the sections is, or one of the groups has problems with the reading. They can't set up the problem. If it's, you can come back in the middle and you can go again. If it's set up like this, they're fine. If we get this information and this information, they're great at finding this. And how do I know that? I know it because I looked at the student work, and I know every problem that's set up like this, with this information missing, that finish time missing, I know they can handle it. But as soon as it starts to mix up, if this is missing, or if this is missing, or if this is at the other end, they completely fall apart. They can add and subtract time until the cows come home, but they can't do this. So that's one section of my middle group. Another section of my middle group, they can pull out this information, they set up their equations right every single time, but they can't add and subtract time, because that's a different skill. And to give you an example of adding and subtracting time, if something starts at 1:55 and it takes 10 minutes, it might be reasonable to think it ends at 1:65, right? 1:55 plus 10, that must be 1:65. That's this group. That's this group that doesn't understand that 1:55 plus 10 isn't 1:65, that there is no 1:65. Or if something started at 1:10 and it took 20 minutes, that they need to add the 20 minutes, not subtract the 20 minutes. So we have this group that needs addition and subtraction work with time, and we have this group that needs reading help to pull out the reading. So within my middle group, I have two things going on. The group that has trouble pulling out when to start, when to stop, it's that the people that need that reading help. What we're going to do with them is we're going to give them lots of problems, and we're going to tell them they don't need to do any addition, any subtraction. All they need to do is we're going to give them their markers. When they read a word problem, I want you to take your red, and I want you to circle the start time. I want you to take your green and circle, I think I did this wrong. Oh, I'm sorry, start time is green, right? Go, green, go. Finish time is pink, we'll circle that. And then the length of the activity is blue. So they're going to spend their time not on adding and subtracting, which they can already do. They're going to spend their time kind of dissecting the word problem and trying to figure out how to set up their equations. Because once they set up their equations, this group is fine. So I'll let Dr. Pichette be that middle group. And then the last group, they're really my most challenging group, because in terms of the instruction that needs to happen, it's that group that's having trouble with the addition and the subtraction of time. That's the most teacher-intensive time. That's where I need to be spending the majority of my time. I'm going to monitor the other groups. I'm going to go, and if I have a paraprofessional in the room, or if I have a Wesleyan College student helping out, they're going to spend a lot of time with those other groups. But I'm going to spend my time with the group that needs help with the addition and the subtraction. So when you go into the classroom as a principal, if I went to Miss Morello's room right now, it would look like a three-ring circus. She's got the high group doing one thing, she's got the middle group doing something, a low group doing something, that there are all these different things going on. Kids talking to each other, kids with the Judy clocks, kids circling different things. If my old principal walked into her classroom, he would have a stroke. Because he would say, like, what is going on in here? And that's how instruction has changed, that we understand that in a classroom, it's this dynamic, moving kind of thing. And if you ask kids what you're doing, if I asked Dr. Pichette's group, what are you guys doing? They should know what we're doing is we're identifying start time, finish time, and the length of the activity. And we're circling start time in green because that means what time we go. And we're doing finish time in red because that's what time we stop. And if they know this, they know the learning objective, they know what they're being measured against, if they understand the purpose, that's a whole different instruction than do 1 through 35 odd. So you guys can sit down, get a nice round of applause. So then it's not necessarily done at that point. When we're done, thank you. When we're done with that, we give a post-assessment. And we look at the results again. And the post-assessment is a tense time for teachers because they've tried something, they've implemented different instructional strategies, and they come together again for the post-assessment and they look at the results. And in most cases, on the post-assessment, we'll see growth. And growth is wonderful, but our teachers are moving to a point where they want to know